Ever get the feeling the world operates on like a hidden set of rules? Like there's a whole other language going on beneath the surface?
Oh, yeah, all the time.
Well, today we're going deep on one of those hidden in plain sight concepts.
Ooh. Like it.
That might just make you rethink some basic assumptions
I am ready.
of how the world works. We're talking about the straw man.
Okay, the straw man.
Now, I dove into a fascinating collection of sources for this deep dive.
Lay it on me.
We're talking interviews with people who claim to have mastered this concept.
Yeah.
Legal documents that outline its supposed origins.
Wow.
And even some historical anecdotes that suggest this has been going on for centuries.
Okay, so.
Our mission today is to understand how someone can control their straw man.
All right, so let's start with the basics. What is a straw man?
Yeah, what is this thing?
So the straw man concept is this idea that when a child's birth certificate is registered with their name in all capital letters, it creates a separate legal entity.
So like a fictional character.
Yeah, think of it like a fictional character representing you in the legal and financial world.
Okay, so it's like a stand-in, like a legal doppelganger.
Yeah, exactly.
But why would such a thing even be created?
Well, the argument goes that this separate entity, the straw man, can then be used in various transactions.
Okay.
Legal and commercial transactions without the individual's full conscious consent.
So it's like I have a shadow puppet, but this puppet is signing contracts and taking on responsibilities without me really knowing what's going on.
Yeah, that's the basic idea. Although, of course, it's important to remember this is a concept with varying interpretations.
Yeah.
And it's not universally accepted as like legal fact.
Right. We're not offering legal advice here.
Exactly.
Just exploring some intriguing ideas.
Sure.
But let's talk about this legal fiction thing. What does that actually mean in this context?
Good question. The term legal fiction is used to describe something created by law that doesn't necessarily have a physical or real-world counterpart.
Okay, give me an example.
Like a corporation. It exists in the eyes of the law, can own property, can sue and be sued, but it doesn't have a physical body,
right,
like a person does.
So in a way, it's like saying this straw man, while not a real person, is treated as such by the legal system.
Exactly. And that's where things get interesting. Because if this straw man is entangled in the legal and financial systems, it raises the question of how much control we as individuals actually have.
So are we saying that this piece of paper, the birth certificate, is the key to creating this whole straw man situation?
Well, proponents of this theory often point to the birth certificate as the foundational document.
Okay.
It's argued that by registering a child's birth in a particular way, you essentially create this separate legal entity that can then be used in various transactions and legal proceedings.
It sounds almost like some kind of legal alchemy, turning a name on a piece of paper into a whole separate entity. It's pretty mind-blowing when you think about it.
It definitely challenges the way we typically think about identity and legal personhood. But this isn't just some abstract legal theory. Some people claim to have used this concept to their advantage in real-world situations.
That's what I find so fascinating about this. There are actually people claiming to use this strawman concept to, say, challenge fines or avoid certain legal obligations.
That's right. There are stories of individuals who argue that certain legal actions are directed at their straw man and not their true selves.
Give me an example.
One anecdote that stands out is this story about a woman who, when stopped by a police officer, refused to provide her last name, stating that it was associated with the straw man and not her true identity.
Wait, so she basically told the officer, that's not my real name. That's my legal fiction you're talking to.
Basically, yeah.
And this actually worked.
Well, the story goes that the officer, taken aback by this unusual argument, ended up letting her go.
Wow. That's a pretty bold move. It makes you wonder if there's something to this whole straw man idea, if people are using it to navigate legal situations like that.
It certainly raises some intriguing questions about the nature of legal identity and the power of understanding these often overlooked aspects of the legal system.
Okay, but let's get back to the birth certificate for a second. Yeah. If this document is the key, what are we supposed to be looking for? What kind of wording should make us raise an eyebrow?
Well, one thing that often gets highlighted is the use of all capital letters for the individual's name.
Right.
Some argue that this is significant in creating the distinction between the human being and the straw man entity.
Okay.
Also, the specific language used to describe the parents. Sometimes using terms like informant rather than father
Interesting.
has fueled speculation about the system's true intentions.
It's amazing how much weight these seemingly small details might carry. Have you ever taken a really close look at your own birth certificate? It makes you wonder what you might find hiding in plain sight.
It's definitely worth a look. You might be surprised at the language used and the implications it could have.
Yeah.
But the plot thickens when we start talking about how this straw man concept is allegedly tied to the financial system.
Okay, now we're getting to the good stuff.
Yeah.
What's the connection between my straw man and my money? This is where things get really interesting, right?
Absolutely. Buckle up, because we're about to dive into the world of fiat currency, trusts, and some truly mind-boggling theories. So we're starting to unravel how this legal fiction might be connected to the financial system before the break.
Right. We left off talking about how this straw man concept could play into our everyday finances. I have to admit, this is not something they teach you in school, and I'm really curious to hear more about this.
Yeah, it's definitely not your typical financial literacy class, but that's what makes it so interesting, right? So let's start with a basic question. What is money, really?
Okay, I think I know this one. Money is what I use to buy things. It's the paper in my wallet, the numbers in my bank account.
Yeah, that's the everyday understanding.
Right.
But when we dig a little deeper, the picture gets more complex. The money we use, fiat currency, doesn't actually have any intrinsic value.
Wait, you're saying my hard-earned cash is worthless?
Not worthless exactly.
Boy.
But its value is based on our collective belief in the system. It's backed by the government's promise, not by anything tangible, like gold.
So it's like we're all just playing a giant game of trust. We all agree that these pieces of paper and digital numbers have value, and that's what makes it work.
That's one way to look at it.
Okay.
And this is where the straw man concept comes back into play.
Okay.
Some argue that when this separate legal entity is created, it's also linked to a trust fund.
A trust fund.
Sometimes called a Siswikivi trust.
Okay, wait, so there's a secret trust fund out there with my straw man's name on it. Tell me more.
Well, according to this theory, these trusts are allegedly backed by a gold deposit, potentially linked to a child's birth weight.
Interesting.
Now, finding concrete evidence of this is another matter, and it's important to remember that this is a fringe theory. It's not established legal fact.
Okay, so it's a bit of treasure hunt then. But if there's even a chance that there's a trust fund out there connected to my straw man, I'm definitely intrigued.
Right. And this is where some people take it a step further. They claim that by understanding the legal framework behind these trusts and the nature of the financial system, you can tap into this alleged wealth, or at least use it to your advantage.
Okay, that's what I'm really curious about. If this straw man is supposedly entangled in this system, are there ways to break free? To reclaim control of your finances and maybe even access these supposed trusts?
There are definitely people who claim to have done just that.
Okay.
One of the names that pops up in this context is Bibi Bacchus.
Oh, yeah. Bibi Bacchus.
Yeah, she's become a prominent figure in the strawman movement, sharing her experiences and strategies.
Didn't she have some kind of a run-in with the Bank of England?
Yeah.
Something about trying to access her alleged trust.
That's right. The story goes that she went to the Bank of England with her birth certificate, believing she could access this trust fund. The details are a bit hazy, but she was apparently escorted out of the building, which she took as a sign that they were hiding something.
Okay. That sounds like something straight out of a movie. Whether you believe her story or not, it definitely adds to the intrigue of this whole concept. But what about more practical strategies? What are some things that people are doing to try to take control of their straw man and finances?
One approach that's gained traction is the accepted for value method.
Accepted for value. Okay.
It involves using specific wording and legal arguments, often drawing on the Uniform Commercial Code, to challenge bills, fines, or even court orders.
Break that down for me. What does accepted for value actually mean in practice?
So imagine you receive a bill in the mail.
Okay.
Instead of simply paying it, you send a letter back, stating that you accept the debt for value, but you're not agreeing to the terms of payment as they're presented.
So it's not about denying the debt, but more about changing the rules of the game.
Exactly. The idea is to use specific legal phrases and arguments to shift the burden of proof and challenge the jurisdiction of the entity demanding payment. Essentially, you're saying, I see you're claiming this debt, but I'm not playing by your rules anymore.
It sounds a bit like legal judo,
Yeah.
like using the system's own weight against it.
Mm-hmm.
But isn't that risky? Couldn't this backfire and land you in even hotter water?
It's definitely not without its risks.
Yeah.
And we have to emphasize again that we are not lawyers. This is not legal advice. It's important to do your own research and understand the potential consequences.
Right, of course. We're all about empowering people with knowledge, not encouraging anyone to take actions they don't fully understand. But this accepted for value approach, it's not just about challenging bills, right? Some people claim to have used it for much bigger things, like avoiding taxes.
That's where it gets even more controversial. Bibi Bacchus, for example, claims to have successfully challenged a $33,000 tax bill
Wow.
using this method.
$33,000. That's not chump change.
Oh.
It makes you wonder if there's something to this strategy, even if it's not a guaranteed win every time.
It certainly highlights the power of understanding the nuances of legal language and financial systems.
Yeah.
But let's be clear, this is a complex area with no easy answers. There are many different interpretations and approaches, and what works for one person might not work for another.
Right. It's not a one-size-fits-all solution. But it seems like the key takeaway here is that the more you understand about these systems, the more empowered you become to navigate them on your own terms.
Absolutely. Knowledge is power, as they say. But along with knowledge comes responsibility. It's crucial to approach these ideas with a critical eye, do your own research, and proceed with caution.
So we've talked about accepted for value, but are there other strategies that people are using to try to control their straw man and assert their financial independence?
There are indeed. And some of these approaches take things a step further, challenging the very foundation of the legal and financial systems as we know them.
We've been on quite a journey exploring this straw man concept. From this seemingly simple idea of a name on a birth certificate to financial systems,
Yeah.
it's a lot to take in. And I'm sure some of our listeners might be wondering where we go from here.
It's definitely a lot to process. We've discussed specific tactics like accepted for value, but there's a whole other layer to this that we need to address.
You're talking about those who take this straw man concept even further,
Oh,
right? The folks who claim to be completely outside the system,
yeah,
the so-called free men.
exactly. This is where things get particularly interesting and, let's be honest, a bit controversial.
Yeah.
The Freeman movement takes the idea of individual sovereignty to a whole new level.
Okay, so remind us, what does individual sovereignty even mean in this context?
So in essence, it's the belief that individuals have inherent rights
Okay.
that are not granted by any government or authority. Freemen argue that they are not subject to the same laws and regulations as everyone else because they have chosen to step outside the system.
So they're basically saying, I don't recognize your authority, therefore your rules don't apply to me. It sounds
Yeah.
pretty radical and maybe even a bit dangerous.
It can be, and we need to approach this with a healthy dose of caution.
Yeah.
While the idea of individual freedom and self-determination is appealing,
Right.
there are significant legal and practical challenges to consider.
Right. I imagine the legal system doesn't exactly welcome people declaring themselves outside its jurisdiction.
Yeah.
So what's the bottom line here? If someone is interested in exploring these ideas further, what advice would you give them?
First and foremost, I would emphasize the importance of thorough research.
Okay.
Don't just blindly accept what you read online or hear from self-proclaimed gurus. Consult reputable sources, legal experts, and get multiple perspectives before drawing any conclusions.
It's like anything else in life. Do your homework, get informed, and don't rush into anything without carefully weighing the potential risks and rewards.
Exactly. And remember, there are no easy answers or quick fixes.
Yeah.
These are complex systems with a long history, and understanding them takes time, effort, and a willingness to engage with different viewpoints.
It's been an incredible journey unpacking this straw man concept.
Yeah.
We've gone from this seemingly simple idea of a name on a birth certificate to exploring questions of legal identity,
Yeah. Yes.
financial systems, and even individual sovereignty. It's a lot to wrap your head around.
It definitely challenges us to think differently about the world we live in and the systems that shape our lives, and whether or not you agree with all the theories and strategies we've discussed.
Right.
I hope this deep dive has sparked your curiosity and encouraged you to ask questions about how these systems work.
Absolutely. Knowledge is power, but it's also a responsibility.
It-
It's up to each of us to use that knowledge wisely, to critically evaluate the information we encounter, and to make informed decisions about how we want to navigate these complex systems.
Well said. And remember, this isn't the end of the conversation. There's always more to learn, more to explore, and more to question. Keep diving deep and keep those critical thinking skills sharp.
And that's a wrap for our deep dive into the strawman concept. Thanks for joining us on this wild ride. We'll be back soon with another deep dive into a fascinating and thought-provoking topic. Until then, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep questioning the world around you.